Alright YouTube, so today we're going to go ahead and actually do something a little bit differently. I usually don't do it this way just because I'm normally like focused on the dashboard. But we're going to talk about the 10,000 mile review of this car and ultimately how it's been over the last few months. So I purchased this in November after my 15 Elantra decided it wanted to give me some issues up the ass in terms of the suspension, the engine, transmission, everything on it was just going wrong. So the engine was only getting 120 miles to a tank, and then the gearbox, whenever I would start up the car, it would shift really hard out of first gear. So we're gonna go ahead and do that and basically do a sort of 10,000 mile review on the car and ultimately how it's been. So I have to say, I'm not impressed with this car, but it's better than the last generation. The last generation definitely had its own faults. It was very unstable, it seemed. This one, it seems that they planted the suspension a little bit better, so the wheels kind of feel more engaged with the road versus you're kind of floating in sort of like a limbo thing and going over speed bumps and stuff like that. You always felt like the car was coming out from under you, whereas in this one, it feels very stable going forward. So the only thing I noticed was that on right turns, the car was making a bunch of noise. Hyundai did replace the motor mount on the passenger side over here. So that motor mount has been fixed, and since then I have not had the crunching noise that I usually got when I was turning right. The left strut was also replaced in the front due to the fact that I still also get some, at weird times, on extreme right turns, I get the strut kind of making a noise over undulations, and basically they replaced the mount, the strut, everything looks good. So I have to wait until winter, unfortunately, to get that sort of looked at again. So as you can see here, the car does have, I cannot figure out how to turn the camera around, so I guess we're just doing it this way. The car does have 10,412 miles. It is only 100 degrees outside today, thank God, because literally it was like 110 the other day and I was sweating like a whore in church. So overall though, the car is not giving me any issues besides the motor mount, but that did take 5 attempts to fix. So technically I could lemon law the car, and that's ultimately where I'm headed. On top of that, the HVAC system did have 2 issues. The thermostat, for one, was stuck open, so the car would never warm up. And then there would needed to be some sort of software update for the second time when the check engine light came on and the car started running a little funny. Everything in it though, besides that, still works well. I would do an interior shot, however, unfortunately, my fiance and I went to lunch and his cup, decided to rip open and go all over my cup holder, as you can see here. So there's a bunch of napkins there, but yeah, no, I was just like, seriously. So the 10,000 mile review will be, I guess, my face, because I've never really shown my face before. Well, I mean, I guess I have, but I've like gained weight and stuff like that and gotten fat because I'm in love. But yeah, otherwise though, everything is held up pretty nicely in terms of interior quality. The only thing I'm worried about is the shift boot. It definitely is a bit dry around the edges, so I'm hoping that that's not going to be an issue in terms of the quality and sort of integrity of that leather. I don't know if it's actual real leather or if it's faux leather or fake leather, but either way, it still needs to be in good condition. Apple CarPlay does work in this car pretty well. The only thing I did notice is that when I shake the cable a little bit, it disengages the Apple CarPlay pretty quickly. So I'm not sure if it's me or if it's the actual USB port. So that's something you're going to want to be aware of. If your car does do that, let me know, because then I got to take it back for them to tighten the port. But everything else has been pretty good in this car. It's just those 2 problems, the motor mount as well as the HVAC system. But they've been pretty good. They've been pretty fixed, as I mentioned earlier, so I haven't really had any issues besides those. In terms of the fuel mileage, it's gotten 10 times better gas mileage than the previous generation. And on top of that, going on road trips and stuff like that, I can go from here to Los Angeles and only use 1/4 of a tank, maybe a little bit more if I'm stuck in traffic. But in my previous Elantra, I'd be at empty by the time I got to LA. So definitely there's a difference in gas mileage there. And really it's kind of funny because the tank only has 1 more gallon than the previous generation. So it's kind of odd that I was getting such poor mileage due to the fact that the car was advertised at 40, and despite only having a 10-gallon tank, which I think that's what it was, I should be getting 400 miles at least. So I was definitely pretty bummed when I found out that the gas mileage isn't that good. And this also too, like me going to LA in this car, this is not driving conservatively. This is going pretty fast and really pushing the engine. So it's definitely interesting to see the difference in gas mileage. I'm glad that Hyundai did fix it. I'm also glad that I have a little bit more headroom in this car. In the previous generation, it was more of like a coupe design. So that back window right there, that's that little line that you see, that actually was not there in the previous generation. So I think they kind of made the back door a little bit bigger, and then on top of that they gave you a little bit more headroom on the arch, so you're able to get in. If you're tall, like my stepfather, he was hitting his head constantly on the other car, whereas this one, he still hits his head because, you know, most of the time he's just clumsy, but he's able to get into the front seat a little bit easier. The engine power is okay. It's not like great. It only makes 145 horsepower and like 131 pound-feet of torque. So around the mid-range is where you're going to see your torque, and then at the higher end obviously is where your horsepower is, but it's not necessarily something that is going to wow you. The 6-speed automatic has been a dream. I definitely do enjoy the gearing in this car due to the fact that it's not too tall, not too short. Hyundai's been pretty good about their transmissions. I mean, starting in, I guess, 2011. The 4 speeds were okay. They really didn't have any issues. It was just they shifted so slowly. So in this particular one, it's a little bit crisper. The torque converter is a little bit more aggressive in this generation versus the previous. You don't notice it as much, but it definitely does lock up very quickly, and it tries to get to the top gears pretty quickly as well. Sport mode and eco mode still work on this car. Eco mode I don't really like too much. It makes it feel too much like a Chevy. Chevys are not very fond of downshifting, and in this particular model, the eco mode is definitely a lot more noticeable. So when it downshifts, it sort of gives you a hard time if you're in eco mode. And sometimes in this car, because of that lack of engine power, you need that lower gear. So unfortunately, it does just kind of make it in for a little bit of a bumpier ride and sort of less smooth ride. But if you're just on a flat line, go for it. Sport mode will lock the car kind of in 4th gear. It will not shift past that unless you're going faster, but it will shift to the first 3 gears like a normal mode transmission sort of deal. So the only time you really notice it is if you go into like 4th gear and then it kind of holds it and you're like, why is it not shifting up? That's sport mode. So otherwise, everything else is going good. Do have a steering wheel cover as well as a dash cover. Yes, my car's name is Oliver, so that's the name my grandma got me. My last car was named Javier, so got one for that one too. So like the car's name is basically on the dashboard, so I'm not gonna complain, I like it. So with that, folks, that concludes my 10,000 mile face review. Never really have done one of these before. I'm going to try to do these, that way it's kind of different from the dashboard, because although it's nice to see how the car drives, it gets kind of boring, so I get it. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go, because I need to go get ready for work and then work my night shift, and then, you know, that's pretty much it. So yeah, have a good one.